Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the role of medications for the management of behavior issues in Prader-Willi Syndrome. My name is Lynn Garrick and I am mom to 19-year-old John, and I am the medical and research coordinator here at PWS USA. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Singh, who is a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist who serves as Vice Chair of Ambulatory Services and Chief of Research and Grants in the Department of Psychiatry at Maimonides Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York. He brings a wealth of clinical experience, academic leadership, and deep compassion to his work. Internationally recognized for his expertise in the behavioral aspects of Prader-Willi Syndrome, Dr. Singh has authored numerous peer-reviewed publications and is an active member of several advisory boards, including those of PWS USA, FPWR, and IPSO. His groundbreaking book, Neurobehavioral Manifestations of Prader-Willi Syndrome, has become an essential resource for clinicians and caregivers around the world. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Singh.
Thank you, Lynn, for an amazing introduction. And Lynn, of course, is amazing. I don't know how she does all that she does. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So many familiar faces. And it's always so much fun to catch up with everybody, even if it's just once a year with some of you. So I have an hour to go through a ton of things. I'll try my best. Okay. I'll reiterate a few things that you're already familiar with, okay? We're dealing with a cascade effect starting from the genes. I'm going to ask you a somewhat philosophical question and just shout out. What is the mind? Anybody? Thoughts? What else? The brain? What else? Consciousness. What else? Processes. Anything else? The engine behind the functioning of our body. Very complex. Confusing. Okay. So, you might have heard that Amazon is trying to recreate the human brain, and they have bought a computer. They're building a computer the size of a city or something like that in order to replicate one human brain. What I'm trying to get at is that if we think of ourselves as neural net, why is it that we are not carrying a supercomputer on our back and we are still being able to carry so much information? The reason we are being able to do that is because we have neural networks within us, okay? Our mind is the summation of the neural networks that are conscious to us at any given moment. That is what our mind is. Our mind exists in our synapses, the connection between neurons that stores information, and the neurons, the pathways that keep getting activated time and time again, those are the ones that become our personality. Are you with me so far? All right, so you know what the mind is and what our personality is. So then, if we shift our neural networks, our mind changes. Are you with me? If we shift our neural networks, so if usually when I see something, if usually I see a snake, right, on the, while on a trail in Phoenix, I'm scared, but then there's recognition that that snake is not poisonous because I saw it in a zoo somewhere and I remember it's not poisonous, I relax, right? So there are two different neural networks that are activated. One is the fight or flight neural network, and then there's another neural network that tells us that things are okay, nothing to worry about. What my one job is today is to convince you that your loved ones with PWS are malleable. They can change. They're not fixed. Their neural networks can also be activated in ways that you may not think possible, that you may not have experienced all of this time, and you think that they're set in their ways, and I'm here to tell you that that's not true. They're not set in their ways. All right, let me see if I can convince you. So we have the genetics. The genetics are kind of set in stone, right? So we are born with PWS, and that leads to a cascade of events, usually, for the most part, related to neuronal migration, the way nerves are distributed during early development to build the brain of a person with PWS, or also the connections between the different neurons in the brain can be problematic. And from recent research, which some of it is still not published, but was discussed over the last couple of days, the pruning system of the brain, which kind of, cuts off and, snips off the problematic brain areas, that part of the brain is also not functioning too well. And then perhaps most importantly, the neurons may have the ability to produce the right hormones and chemicals, but they somehow have lost the ability to release it at the right time. So these are some of the complex things that are happening that leads to a lot of the manifestations that I'm going to talk about today. So what are the behavioral manifestations? A very busy slide, but that's true. I mean, it's complex. It's not rocket science to be able to say that it is complex. And the problem is that there is something called diagnostic overshadowing, right? People call the disorder PWS, they forget all of the things that happen due to that underlying PWS that themselves, in their own right, are problems that we can treat, okay? So when you go to a doctor and you say, my child has PWS, they have a preconceived notion about who your child is, even without seeing them. And I understand why, because that's how doctors are trained. We are trained to very quickly identify patterns, give it a name, and throw a medicine at them. I understand that, and I think that serves an important purpose. But when you're thinking about the uncommon conditions such as PWS, we might miss the mark. There's an availability or a recency bias. This is what I read in the books. So whoever's walking through the door with PWS must have all of those things. And how dare they be tall, and how dare they be thin, how dare they be alive into their 20s, because the book said that they shouldn't be alive. So you guys are at the cutting edge. The doctors are not. They're not at the conference, okay? So your job becomes more difficult because you have to educate, and I know you're already doing that. There are developmental features that you've had to deal with. Autism spectrum disorder, very common, very commonly missed. I've said this over the past 10 years of conferences, that you must pursue a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. The way I want you to think about it is, if your child is suffering from significant language delays, social difficulties, behavioral problems, they likely have autism. And why is it important to get that diagnosis? Because autism is a lot more common. A lot more common. So I can have a certain genetic condition, but my phenotype, the way I display it outwardly, is autism. What's the harm in that? There's a lot more treatment for autism. You can go walk in the doctor's office and say Prader-Willi Syndrome, and they will have biases. But if you tell them autism, they know it's a spectrum. All of a sudden, they pay more attention. Remember that. Try to take advantage of that. and there are a lot more services. Now, the psychiatric comorbidities, interestingly, the most common psychiatric comorbidity, and I would actually, hyperphagia is a neuropsychiatric condition, but even outside of hyperphagia, the most common conditions are skin picking and compulsivity-related symptoms. Rigidity, compulsivity, anxiousness, which is a state of anxiety rather than a trait of anxiety. This is important to understand. I can be anxious, right now because I'm on stage in front of 800 people, right? There's something wrong with me because I'm not feeling anxious. I feel like I'm among friends. But, normally this would be anxiety-provoking, right? And that is a state of anxiety. It's not an anxiety disorder. On the other hand, if I didn't sleep all night, I had to take some Xanax and an Ambien and then maybe some cannabis as well, that's probably, you know what I mean? That's a trait, that's an anxiety trait that I carry with me wherever I go, right? So our patients can rapidly go into a state of anxiety, and then they can rapidly step out of that state of anxiety, and that may look like a mood swing, but it's not. Okay, it's not bipolar disorder, it's not a mood swing, okay? It's just the fact that they live in the moment the way you and I don't. Their mind, the sum of neural networks that are active in any given moment, it's hard for them to change and involve the higher functioning part of the brains. So going back to the snake analogy, right? Although it's not true, a child with PWS may not be scared of snakes, but if they are, even if you tell them and convince them this is not a poisonous snake, they're gonna still remain anxious because it's hard for them to switch their neural networks from a lower functioning maladaptive neural network to a higher functioning neural network, okay? And that is where perhaps some of our treatments work in. ADHD is a misnomer, and it's misunderstood, right? Because it's just a set of symptoms cobbled together: attention deficit, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, and we just call it like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What it truly is temporal dysregulation, time blindness. That is what it is. People with ADHD have difficulty sequencing tasks because they don't know what comes next. They have trouble, it gets jumbled up in their heads, and they have trouble organizing their lives in a way that is functional. How many of you think that that's happening with your child? There you go. ADHD is very common in PWS, very common in PWS. Do not fall into the trap of diagnostic overshadowing. We are treating the phenotype, not the genotype, not yet. So it's important for us to have an open mind about what's happening to our child and don't assume that it's all PWS. They have PWS and they're allowed to have other conditions that are more treatable. Mood disorders are slightly less common. That includes depression and bipolar type of conditions, and then psychotic episodes. Now, depression, in my experience, is more common among higher functioning individuals with PWS. And it gets worse as they age, as our patients age. And the reason, most likely, is that they can see their differences and they can compare themselves with others. And that difference is difficult for them. I found that to be a bigger problem in individuals who are going to, I think we take all well-meaning parents take a lot of pride in sending their loved ones with PWS to regular schools, okay? What I think many of us make the mistake of forgetting is that the richest folks don't send their kids to regular schools. They send them to the smallest possible schools with the largest number of teachers. Then why don't we do the same when we are entitled to it? I think there's some false pride that we get from saying that our children are going to a regular school. The more important thing to focus on is their individual developmental trajectory. Are they developing in comparison to themselves, not in comparison to others? Okay? Now, a more problematic issue is psychotic episodes, and I'll talk to you a lot more about that. We spoke about anxiousness, trait versus state anxiety. Impulsivity and aggression are two sides of the same coin. Impulsivity means, and you probably have heard me before if you've attended conferences, you know, I'm mad at you, I'm really, really super mad at you, okay? And I pick up the chair. I want to pick up the chair and throw it at you, but there's a part of my brain that says, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't throw a chair at the audience. You'll get into trouble, probably go to jail. But a person with PWS gets mad at you, and before they could stop themselves, the chair's flying through the room, and that's impulsivity. And the reason that's not psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder, or it's not malicious aggression like Bernie Madoff, because it's not planned. And most of my patients have a lot of regrets about it. Now, there might be some of you who says, like this, my kid is just flipping me off all the time, never says sorry. And the reason is that how much can you say sorry? How often, how many times will you say sorry about the same thing over and over again for years? At some point you'll say, your fault, you came in the way, I was just throwing the chair, why did you stand there? Okay? And I understand that. I would have done the same. If I was in your kids' shoes, I would be exactly like them. And guess what? You would be like them too. So for you to expect differently is a problem. It's better to think about how we can modify the environment and their behaviors. I'll talk a bit about hyperphagia now. And I know this is like seems like a complex slide, but this is very important for you to understand. All said and done, there's one pea-sized organ in the middle center of the brain that is behind the issues seen in PWS. That's called the hypothalamus, okay? It's sort of like a relay, well, not exactly, but it's sort of like a part of the brain that connects the rest of the body to the brain and then allows us to make wise decisions for ourselves, okay? Now, it does so by giving us a sense of homeostasis. Things are okay, I'm not in trouble, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, I'm not too full, I'm not too empty, all of that stuff. So just talking about food for a second, there are a set of neurons that are orexigenic, which means makes us want to eat, and then there are a set of neurons that makes us stop eating, anorexigenic, okay? And NPY, AGRP neurons, you don't have to worry about the names. Basically, in PWS, there is downregulation of the anorexigenic neurons. They're not functioning well enough, okay? Most likely because they're not being able to release the hormones that they create, okay? Because the genes that are involved with that release function. So I'm making all of this oxytocin and growth hormone and all of that, but it's staying stored in the cells, it's not being released to do its work, okay? And what happens over time after, years is that the rest of the body kind of forgets how to use these hormones, okay? If you don't use it, you lose it, and which is why sometimes medicines like oxytocin don't seem to work in older individuals with PWS. That's early intervention is important, be it through psychotherapy or medications or whatever else, endocrine, early growth hormone, early oxytocin in some people, and all of that is important, right? So same thing with early ABA, behavioral therapies, which we'll talk about. So, and that causes a cascade in the body where the insulin is high but not being able to do its job because the cells are not being able to read the insulin levels. Same thing with the leptin and so on. So, and that causes hyperphagia. Now, basically, this is a schematic. The brain's I'm full signal is broken, okay? And the hormones get ignored, signals from the body are not being read, and that leads to a constant state of hunger. Studies have shown that people with PWS can survive with at least one-third less calories, but they need 3 times as much food to feel full. They do feel full. So it's not like it's a dysfunction, it's not an absence of satiety, okay? But they need thrice as much food to feel full, and that can be lethal over time because of diabetes, ruptured stomach, and all kind of really horrible things. So now, many of you might be familiar with the fact that when judges are hungry and they have to pass a sentence, they give worse sentences. Do you know about that? How many of you? Yeah. So it's well-known study, right? When people are hungry or feeling hot or too cold, they tend to make horrible decisions for themselves. So for those of you who are up in the middle of the night, sleepy and whatever, and you're buying stocks on Robinhood, stop doing that. Or if you're doing that, just let your spouses know. Okay. All right. So this will now be very clear to you. Our brain's primary objective is to flexibly adapt to dynamic environments. In a state of uncertainty, when we can't predict what's going to happen next, our brain needs to adapt quite quickly. And for that, we kind of feel the butterflies in our stomach. Okay, I'm feeling this internally, I'm feeling that internally, and I have to adapt. Or extrinsically, hey, I'm feeling too hot, I'm going to step into the shade, and so on and so forth. So our brain combines data, information coming from outside through our sensory organs, and inside from our internal sensory organs. They all do the same thing. They go to this one part, one most important, beautiful brain and central nervous system, which itself has no eyes or ears, so it needs to hear and get information, combine that to light up in different ways and make the right decisions. Okay? Are you all with me so far? Okay, how many of you are falling asleep? Yesterday, before the scientific conference, I was the last talk, right? And there are dim lights and people are like falling asleep. I speak slowly and softly. Plus, I'm Indian, so people just think that, it's okay to sleep because, it's like there's this calming, sensation. Patients come in, parents come in, they're like tearing each other apart, then they sit in my couch and like, oh. And then within 5 minutes, the child is asleep, the parent is like barely being able to stay awake, and I have to shake them up and say, here's the script, call me, make sure you remember what I said. So, this function of response monitoring, if it's broken, if it's not working well, it can lead to response perseveration, which is the rigidity that you look at, that you see. Doing the same thing over and over again, despite something bad happening, right? So a child without PWS might stop after the 3rd time of pulling your shirt sleeve and saying, Dad, take me to Oasis, the water park, right? So after the 3rd time when I'm not going, I'm hungry, I want to have my beer, they shut up, right? But a person with PWS, you do the same thing and they just don't get it. They'll keep going, so is it time, right? So, and that's because it's easier for them to engage in that habit than to flexibly adapt. That's a very key concept. Very key concept. Do not equate their abilities with your own. They have difficulty with switching from one neural network to another because the secretory and chemical nature of our brain requires quick action to take place, which is not happening in them. Okay, so I loved what Patrice Carroll said this morning when she said that they teach us how to take our own time and take a deep breath. So when after 25 minutes of them holding the second sock, they've just put one on, and you're like, okay, you're gonna miss the bus, you have to remind yourself and be patient that they're having trouble with moving on, and for good reason, okay? Now, hyperphagia just messes up the problem even more, complicates the issue, okay? Because we have only so much cognitive reserve, all of us, okay? We need to sleep, we need to eat, we need to go to the bathroom, we need to do a lot of things to be homeostatic and be able to take the right decisions. You add to that a constant state of life-threatening starvation, at least psychologically, and no wonder the entire system of response monitoring is gone. Well, not gone, but difficult, becomes a lot more difficult. We spoke about response perseveration, right? And it is somewhat related to compulsivity, but it's not exactly obsessive compulsive disorder, okay? So you can give this negative feedback which would affect someone else without PWS, but it's not working the same in your children with PWS. Now this is important. Until we can very convincingly state, and I think hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years we'll be able to say that, until you can convincingly be told by those of us who see, hundreds of patients with PWS that, hey, you can leave your fridge and your cabinets open, don't worry about it, this is a medicine and this is what we're doing and nothing to worry about. Until you hear that from us, be proactive with locking things up. It's life-saving. And it becomes, there's a need to make home a safe zone. And I know it's very problematic in the sense that it becomes very restrictive, but then it's very hard to put those restrictions in place when your children are already hyperphagic. Okay, that's when a lot of the aggression becomes problematic because all of a sudden you're putting a lot of restrictions in place and they're not used to it. Now, people with PWS can learn, work, and enjoy life, but they need structure, food safety, and support. Now, it's important to know that food security is not a treatment for PWS. It does not treat PWS, okay? It only accommodates for PWS. All right, like before we had glasses, we would have to sit in the front seat. Okay, is that a treatment for myopia or hypermetropia? No, it's just an accommodation. Before stimulants, kids with ADHD would be thrown out of the class or asked to sit like right in front of the teacher. Hey, Tommy, back to the book, back to the book. That's an accommodation, not a treatment. Similarly, food security is an important and essential accommodation, but do not conflate that with treatment, because that will make you complacent, but it will restrict your life a lot. So I want you to keep seeking a treatment while you are accommodating for this, for hyperphagia. There are many therapies. There are others who can speak much more fluently and with more authority about the other therapies that are used in PWS. I encourage you to see all their sessions today and tomorrow and get to know them and reach out to them. There are more therapists joining the field, which I'm really excited about. Some therapies that I'll touch on briefly are cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps notice thoughts, manage emotions, and respond more calmly. And usually there are some visual tools, there's some homework that the kids enjoy to do, and it's a good modality to be able to give the language that the child or the adult with PWS often needs to be able to describe their emotions. Then there are mindfulness and breathing exercises. People don't talk about it much, but one of the only researched modalities that have been shown to work in PWS is mindful walking, awareness of the ground, okay? If your child or your loved one with PWS is losing themselves for whatever reason, trying to bring them back into their body, either by taking a walk with them and say, hey, feel the ground underneath you. How does it feel? Can you feel the ground? Let's take your shoes off. Let's just feel the ground. Or breathe with me. You don't need to do belly breathing. You don't have to go nuts about how well you're breathing. Doesn't matter. Just breathe with me. Okay. All of these things. Okay. Think about the. Tell me 3 things you can see, 3 things you can feel if you close your eyes. These are ways to anchor the person in the here and now, and this dysregulation that's happening in the brain, because the brain is simulating things, right? Like, you guys are sitting here, I know that because there's a simulation in my brain that tells me that you guys are not literally inside my brain, right? Okay, so they're simulating a reality which is taking them away from the true reality. And the way to bring it back to the easiest, the fastest way to do that is to do something visceral with them, which is why vagal nerve stimulation is really fascinating. It's like automated mindfulness, okay? I just get too sleepy with it, so I don't use it. Social stories and role play, therapists can use stories, practice scenarios. That allows them to be very individualized. I love the fact that people are so excited about new drugs and all of that, but I'm really disappointed with the fact that people don't give enough value to the psychotherapies or to the devices. The most ancient form of treatment that we have is our words, okay? Our words modify neural networks like nothing else can. Take a breath. I'm with you. Everything's going to be okay. I know it feels like everything is falling apart, but I'm with you. This is more powerful than many medications can be, at least in the short run. And the more you practice it when things are not falling apart, the easier it gets when things are falling apart. So you need to practice mindfulness and psychotherapies and these non-medication ways of dealing with people with PWS while they're not upset and angry. I feel like I won't even get to the medications today. So play therapy, art therapy, everyone, almost all my patients like some form of art. Okay? So lean into that, help them use that in a constructive, positive way. Parent coaching is very important. Parent education is very important. So the United States has a very nuclear family structure, which is fine for individualism, but it sucks when it comes to taking care of someone who has disabilities. It's a lot of burden, and you have to share that burden. And there's this, radical individualism in our culture, which I understand. It's like, I want to do it my way, and only I can do it. My kids are very different from yours, and, this won't work for my kid because they're different from yours. Lean into our common experience. It's okay. It's okay to be the same as others. It's okay. Your kids are one person, but they share a lot in their experience with others. Let's lean into that. Let's learn from the other people's experience. Therapy in PWS often needs to be visual, repetitive, and tailored to developmental level, but it can be effective. But it's like watching grass grow, right? So one therapy session is not going to do the same. Like you have to let it brew and soak in the good stuff. All right, we'll go into medications. There's a busy style. Don't worry about it. Don't take a picture. It's okay. Yeah, it's in my book also if you need more details. The one thing that was missing from my book because it wasn't approved yet is diazoxide choline extended release, which is called Vicat XR, which is now approved for FDA. And the only thing I'm going to say about that is that this, along with one more medication I'm going to mention, they have been proven to reduce the burden of hyperphagia in people with PWS. If you feel like at least half of the times the aggression, irritability, and behavioral issues are due to food seeking or something related to food, even if they're not having even if they're not breaking the fridge or, doing any damage, they may have hyperphagia that is being missed. And treating hyperphagia is, for the first time, becoming accessible to you all, so take advantage of that, because that itself can take away many of the behavioral issues. So, just to touch upon some of the common issues, okay? Whenever there's any problem, any behavioral issue, right, so the kind of people come to me for chronic issues that are sort of like a baseline problem, their everyday struggles, and then there are sudden changes, okay? And both of them need to be treated differently and thought of differently. An episodic sudden change, especially when it is accompanied by lack of need for sleep or excessive talkativeness or lack of interest in food, a sudden disappearance of hyperphagia, those could be signs of something a lot more problematic, like mania, hypomania, or sometimes psychosis. And then an antipsychotic might be more helpful. On the other hand, if there are chronic irritability and aggression type of issues, the study, by the way, when it says, wherever it says alpha agonist, the one that has been most studied, and that's the only drug that has ever been studied in PWS, that's the only psychopharm medication that has been studied in PWS in a randomized controlled way. That's guanfacine extended release. And thanks to many of you who participated in that clinical trial with me, we have published that finding, and it's helping people around the globe. So yes, irritability or aggression chronically can very often be indicative of impulsivity, poor impulse control that we spoke about previously, and that is treated with an alpha agonist. Sertraline in low doses, our colleagues in Germany showed a few years ago that low dose sertraline, and I spoke with them one-on-one, 50 to 75, like really most of those patients stopped at about 50 milligrams. And my experience has been that you have to be very cautious because, like Dr. Forrester, who's in the audience, has recently published case reports of significant behavioral activation. You have to be careful. What is behavioral activation? Early signs, so you're very excited about finally going on sertraline or an antidepressant or something, and you're seeing a lot of hope. And then instead of seeing an improvement, you see a worsening where they're more irritable, they're more aggressive. Take a pause, and that's why I want you to start low, because you can just stop the medicine right there and reassess, okay? I would not recommend any of the other SSRIs right now because the evidence is very low and the dose range in sertraline is very wide. You can go from like 12.5 milligrams all the way to 250 milligrams, which allows us to give very low dosages. Okay, so that makes it relatively easier to predict what will happen with the next dose escalation. For those of you who had raised your hands earlier about ADHD, if there is a significant, if there isn't a lot of excessive daytime sleepiness, and there's skin picking, then I would still think about, guanfacine. The sleepiness tends to get better with time. And I'm happy to answer questions if there are specific questions about that. Stimulant medicines are not that unsafe. It's interesting, right? One would say that, hey, Zoloft is causing behavioral activation and some people get hypomanic and psychotic. What about stimulants, which are like literally called stimulants? But it turns out that medicines that work on dopamine predominantly rather than serotonin predominantly are relatively safe. So even something like bupropion, I prefer to prescribe that over the more serotonergic medicines. Because dopamine, interestingly, does not seem to trigger the hypomania or mania as much as serotonin does. There are neurobiological reasons for that, which if you're very interested in science, send me an email, I'll tell you more. And it's in my book as well, if you look at the neurobiology chapter. Alpha agonists, if there's no sleepiness, it's a no-brainer. That's the only one that's been studied. If your child has not been on guanfacine extended release, which is called Intuniv in the market, that should be the first-line treatment for aggression, ADHD, irritability. For skin picking, the first-line treatment is not a prescribed medication. N-acetylcysteine, NAC, is an over-the-counter medicine. But it needs to be taken for a long time and at effective dosages. The minimum effective dose, I would say, is 600 milligrams twice a day. Now, in the past, people used to make a big deal about Pharmanac, which was like one specific company that made an effervescent tablet, and people are spending thousands of dollars to get it. There's no need to go nuts over Pharmanac. NAC is NAC. As long as you get it from a reputable company over the counter, you're fine. It usually comes as 600 milligram tablets or capsules, and you give it, you start with once a day, you can go up to twice a day, and up to 1,800 milligrams twice a day is pretty safe. If you're going beyond that, I would suggest you work with someone like me or another provider who is familiar with this medicine. Why? Because some people can develop GI symptoms with it. The only people that should not take it is if they have had any type of cancer, because it's a strong antioxidant. So if you know anybody who has suffered from cancer, you know the doctors make you stop all vitamins because they don't want the cells to grow too fast. So, that's the only, caution. I have never had an issue with that, though. If there's an inadequate response, our study showed that alpha agonists like guanfacine can help. Interestingly, the other medicine that helps is topiramate. Now, one of the best kept secrets in the world of Prader-Willi syndrome is topiramate. How many of you have tried topiramate on your children? Right, see, it's a secret. Guys, you need to share the knowledge. I'll tell you why, it's important. Topiramate is the only study other than VICAT now which has been shown in a double-blind placebo environment to reduce hyperphagia. Why is no one talking about it? Because there's no money to be made. It's been around for many, 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 many years, and nobody cares about it. It needs to be prescribed. It's not like it has side effects. Some people can describe feeling slower mentally. Some people can have a little bit of sleepiness, but overall, it's one of the better tolerated medicines. It can be prescribed by your pediatrician. You can come to a psychiatrist. You can come to me. And topiramate is well tolerated. The dosages the studied dosage was 200 milligrams, so 100 milligrams twice a day, but you can't jump to that dose. You have to start with 50 and slowly work your way up. But I encourage you to discuss that with your doctor if VICAT is not an option for you. Naltrexone is very little studied. I've had mixed experiences, no side effects, very well tolerated, but it's been studied in other populations and has caused weight loss in many people. So I do prescribe it for skin picking and hyperphagia, but really as a third line now. Vicat, topiramate, naltrexone as third line. Okay, so it's, all right, I'm going to skip. So psychosis, sudden alarming change, we spoke about it a little bit. Voice hearing experience, sudden onset. So someone was asking me yesterday, my loved one with PWS talks to themselves. If they've always been talking to themselves and this is their way of symbolically playing, or they have, they are sort of having a conversation within their play, I don't worry about it. But if it's sudden, and it's alarming, and it's accompanied by a change in sleep, a change in their usual behaviors, and it's pretty drastic when people get psychotic. It's not just a little bit, right? And the problem is that you take them to the ER, and the ER physicians have never seen something like that. First, they've never seen PWS. They haven't seen PWS with this conglomeration of symptoms can become very confusing. So, having this knowledge is going to be important. They do tend to respond quite quickly to treatment. If your child has developed this for the first time, it is worth it to go through the $1 million workup, in under some conditions, in the sense that MRI and neurological issues. But more often than not, it is cycloid psychosis, which gets treated with antipsychotics like risperidone, aripiprazole, medicines like that, and they respond quite well and quite fast. Okay, so I'm going to skip that part. We spoke about guanfacine a little bit. It increases the activity of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, reduces aggression, inattention, hyperactivity, and positive effects on skin picking. I'll touch upon VNS. I'm really excited about VNS, guys. I can't begin to tell you. I think if your child has outbursts, please try VNS. I think this is the time to get it for no cost to you in a controlled environment. I'm afraid of people getting VNS on their own and trying it sort of like willy-nilly and like not seeing any effect from it and then giving up on it. In the way this particular study is designed, which you'll hear a lot more about in the clinical trials section. So, I won't, spill all the beans, but there's a lot of hope that I have because of this study. And similarly, the light therapy study has been fascinating. We've had, I presented the interim analysis, yesterday in the scientific conference. Oh, well, I didn't. My colleague, Hassan, where's Hassan? Hassan? There he is. Hassan, he's your man. Go to him for any studies. Hassan, hold a huge target sign. All right? He's awesome. Our team is PWS. They're all experts. They know how to draw labs. They know how to talk to people. A lot of our studies are completely remote or very minimally, I know it's difficult to travel. So please consider light therapy for excessive daytime sleepiness. We are also doing the hyperphagia study for ARD 101, VNS study, pitolisant study. And we basically, any new study that comes into the game, we are doing it. So, and Brooklyn is nice. Okay, so how many of you have my book already? All right, good, okay. All right, very nice, thank you. So, it's been really, really heartening to hear such positive feedback from across the world. I get emails, every now and then from across the world, and just, moves me because I thought it sucked, frankly. I was like, is it worth the effort? People probably already know this. It's like, but I think it was worth the effort. I'm glad that people have given that feedback. And hopefully I'll get a chance to expand on this with the next edition. We have, Paidi, can you stand up? Dr. Anand is a pediatrician, and she's joined me full-time in practice. I know many people have expressed concerns about my out-of-network fees and stuff like that. I'll just spend a minute on this, okay? Because it's important. The current system in the United States is not conducive to multi-state virtual care through insurance. Not possible. I've tried it, cannot do it, guys. I'm sorry. What I can do is, through Dr. Anand, reduce my fees considerably. Not all of you are going to need to see a psychiatrist. There is a real dearth of a generalist who can take care of many aspects of PWS and connect you to specialists and clinical trials and to psychiatrists. And that's who she is, and she's worked for many years in an underserved population, very culturally sensitive. Give us a try, connect with us. That's the QR code. We plan to offer free consultations forever. I think that's the least we can do. And I'm trying to work, if you guys have any ideas, for those of you who have some means and business sense, unlike me, please tell me how I can provide pro bono care. Our aim is to provide pro bono care to at least 15 to 20% of patients in 2026, okay? I want your help. Please share your ideas, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's fascinating, and it's always so nice to hear from you. It's easy to digest, and it's easy to understand in your wealth of knowledge. So thank you for your expertise and sharing. We have, we have a few minutes before 3:15, which is our next break, and we have Paige and Diane who will be with microphones. So if you have questions for Dr. Singh, just raise your hand and we'll find you.
There's a question right there.
Yep.
There are a couple of questions.
Yeah, Paige over there.
I guess speak up. I saw that. Okay, there you go.
Hi, my daughter also has muscular dystrophy, which comes with hypersomnia. So her hypersomnia is off the charts. She's been on pitolisant for years, and we have tried every stimulant out there known, including guanfacine, and she doesn't tolerate them, either super anxious or excessive tiredness that never goes away. And we've got skin picking and behavior issues, and I feel stuck.
Modafinil has been tried already?
It's been a long time. It's been years since we tried it. We could give it another try.
I would recommend that, because if they're not good candidates for stimulants, then modafinil kind of bypasses that whole dopamine system and serotonin system. It works on a different receptor type, and it tends to have fewer behavioral effects. So it doesn't have a lot of positive effects on behavior, but it also doesn't have a lot of negative effects on behavior. So if someone has predominantly sleep issues, I would say light therapy, because no side effects, and modafinil might be the safer way to go. There are other agents which are coming up, but if you haven't given like a solid try, then it's worth it doing again.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess my question might be along the same lines. You had mentioned for the ADHD with excessive daytime sleepiness to use both the alpha agonist and plus or minus the modafinil, but I was wondering about pitolisant. Do you have evidence that it works the same with pitolisant? Is it different?
Yeah, so pitolisant, the study is ongoing. We are one of the sites. You will have to join the study in order to really, if your child has excessive daytime sleepiness and you've tried modafinil and it's not worked, I think it's worth it to go for the study. If they've ever had any psychotic features or behavioral activation, I would stay away from that though. So, because these medicines can also be activating. But if that's not the case, if they're young, they haven't had these issues, you should consider the study. Yeah. And for those who are concerned about joining the light therapy study and the pitolisant study, you can join the light therapy study and then after that still be able to go to the pitolisant study. But not the other, like if once you're in pitolisant, then no other studies can be joined. So, but call us when you call Hassan on the number that was given previously. Oh my goodness, they're showing me this big. My fly is not open? Okay. All right. Okay.
Hi, earlier near the beginning of your talk, you emphasized the importance of obtaining an autism spectrum diagnosis.
Yeah.
I'm curious if these occur with equal frequency in males and females, or if there's a discrepancy.
To my knowledge, there isn't a big discrepancy in the autism diagnosis. I feel like it's highly underdiagnosed. In fact, even in the scientific community, people say only 40–45%. I think that's completely wrong. I think because our patients can be their verbal abilities it's so high as compared to their executive functioning that it could be deceptive for people who are not familiar with PWS. And again, there's diagnostic overshadowing where you go into the neuropsychologist's office who's never seen PWS and they're like, no, it's not autism, it's PWS. Not true. So in that's another reason for you to seek consultation from a few of us who have some expertise in this, so that you can at least get like a letter or a booklet that you can take to your neuropsychologist, because that diagnosis needs to be rock solid early on so you can get lifelong benefits. So the gender difference, we keep looking for some gender differences, like I did for the, we are looking at psychotropic prescription patterns, and really there isn't as much gender differences as I would have expected. So it's pretty, it's not a sexist disorder. Yeah. There are a few hands raised there.
I had a question back here. Our son is 10. The psychiatrist, we take guanfacine already, and the topiramate, NAC, all of that. We just received the ViCat XR. We're excited to start it this next week. You alluded to it a little bit. How does that play with the topiramate? Do we still keep on going? Do we stop it?
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's the question.
Don't stop it. Don't stop anything. Do one thing at a time, okay? Be deliberate with every addition and reduction, okay? So that old school way of cross-tapering medicines, I'm starting a new medicine, so I'm gonna slowly lower the other medicine, causes more confusion than anything else. The way to add medicines, even if you plan to reduce another medicine, is to add the new medicine until it is for sure at an effective level, and you've had enough time where both things are working, and then taking the other one away to see what happens next. You have to think like a sharp researcher and not just do things, because you feel like. Feelings need to be discarded when it comes to medications. There's straight from New Jersey.
We're running out of time. This will be the last question.
Yeah, being from New Jersey where it's legal, can you talk at all about cannabis in treatment? Not for me. Well, maybe for me, but.
Okay, so here's, listen, controversial, very controversial. I have mixed feelings about this. I feel like cannabinoids are an unexplored territory. I feel like CBD holds real promise, but I'm not allowed to prescribe it, quote unquote. And it's very difficult so it has to be, I can't make a blanket statement on it because it's not for everyone. And it's very difficult to make sure that you're really taking only CBD, because the slightest amount of THC can cause temporal dysregulation. So like it can completely disorganize the brain, right? So CBD keeps things together, THC throws things apart. Nature made the plant in such a way that you can get both, but human beings messed with it, and now we can really mess people up with, like I'm telling you. So I think that the only time I would feel comfortable saying, okay, you're on CBD and that's okay, would be in an adult over 25, brain is completely developed and never been psychotic. And even though the law prohibits us from prescribing CBD, it doesn't prohibit us from talking about CBD if you bring up the question, just like you did. So I would say it's okay. It's a fair question to discuss with the prescribing providers about safety, but if they're not knowledgeable, you have to go to the right source. But CB1 is very interesting. It does reduce the appetite as well. It has antipsychotic effects, anxiolytic effects, sleep modulating effects, but it's very difficult to say what dosage and for whom, and you have to be with an expert who has done this work before. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Singh.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.